What if the person who saved your life was someone society ignored? Think about that for a second. Someone you'd walk past without a second glance, someone you might even avoid. This is the story of a homeless boy, a billionaire, and a single moment that changed everything. It's not every day you hear a story like this. A warning from a boy who had nothing. A decision from a man who had everything. And the ripple effect that nobody saw coming. But this isn't just about two people. This story matters because it shows us the uncomfortable truths about privilege, race, and the walls we build between us. Today, we're going to explore one question: can a single act of compassion really change everything? Even in a world divided by racism and inequality? Stay with us, because what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about people, power, and possibility. It was a freezing night. The kind of cold that doesn't just touch your skin but gets into your bones, making every breath feel like a struggle. On that night, a young boy sat on the curb of a busy street. He was wrapped in a thin, dirty blanket, one that had long stopped doing its job. His sneakers were falling apart, his hands were chapped and raw, and his eyes, those eyes told a story of survival far beyond his years. He didn't have a name to most people who passed by. Just a boy holding a sign scrawled with shaky letters, "Anything helps." The boy wasn't expecting much. He knew how the world worked. People saw him as invisible, a problem to be ignored, not a person with a story. But across the city, someone else was living a very different life. A man, seated comfortably in the back of a car worth more than most people would make in a lifetime. A billionaire. He was on his way home from a glittering event, a night filled with laughter, applause, and the kind of conversations that revolve around power and money. For him, the night was just another successful chapter in a life that seemed untouchable. The car hit a detour. Construction had blocked the usual route. It was a minor inconvenience for the billionaire. Barely worth a thought. But it was this detour, this tiny, insignificant twist, that led him straight to the boy. The car stopped at a red light. Just long enough for the man to glance out the window. Just long enough for him to see the boy. Now, most people would look away, and the billionaire wasn't much different. He almost did. He almost ignored the boy sitting there, his face half hidden under the hood of his jacket. But something made him pause. Maybe it was the way the boy looked up, not with desperation, but with a kind of quiet defiance. Maybe it was the way the boy's eyes locked on his, as if he had something important to say. Without thinking, the billionaire rolled down the window. Just a few inches. He wasn't sure why he did it. He wasn't even sure what he was going to say. But before he could speak, the boy beat him to it. The boy's voice was steady. Low but clear. And his words hit the billionaire like a punch to the gut. He didn't ask for food. He didn't ask for money. Instead, he said something that made the man freeze. "You need to be careful," the boy said. "Someone's watching you." For a moment, the billionaire didn't respond. He just stared at the boy, trying to process what he'd just heard. It was such an odd thing to say. Who was watching him? Why would this boy care? And how could he possibly know anything about the billionaire's life? The boy didn't wait for an answer. He kept talking. "People like you," he said, "you think you're untouchable. You think your money keeps you safe. But it doesn't. I've seen it happen before. People like you, they never see it coming." The billionaire was used to people asking him for things, not warning him about some invisible danger. He leaned forward slightly, narrowing his eyes. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice more curious than dismissive. The boy shrugged, but there was something in his expression, something knowing. "You'll see," he said. "Just remember what I told you." And with that, the boy stepped back, clutching his sign like it was a shield. The light turned green, and the driver hesitated, waiting for instructions. But the billionaire didn't say a word. He was staring at the boy, at his calmness, his certainty, and the strange unease that had settled in his chest. Against his better judgment, the billionaire rolled down the window further. "Wait," he said. "What do you mean?" "Who's watching me?" The boy glanced over his shoulder, almost nervously, before looking back at the man. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I can't tell you everything," he said. "Not here." And then, before the billionaire could ask more, the boy turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the street. The billionaire sat back in his seat, his mind racing. Who was this boy? Why did he seem to know something no one else did? And most importantly, was he telling the truth? By the time the car pulled away, the billionaire couldn't shake the feeling that the boy's warning wasn't random. That it was personal. That something, someone, was indeed watching him. And the boy, a homeless kid with nothing to his name, might be the only one who knew why. The billionaire sat back in his leather seat as the car moved forward, but his mind was stuck at that red light. The boy's words kept echoing in his head, "Someone's watching you." At first, he brushed it off. It was absurd. A random homeless kid couldn't possibly know anything about his life. Yet, the way the boy had spoken, calm, deliberate, almost too sure of himself, made it hard to ignore. By the time he reached his gated mansion on the edge of the city, the unease had settled into something heavier. His usual routine, checking emails, sipping a glass of scotch, scrolling through news, felt hollow. His home, normally a fortress of comfort, seemed quieter than usual, the silence pressing against him like a weight. As he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he began to think about the boy. Who was he? Where had he come from? Why would he make such a claim? The next morning, the billionaire couldn't let it go. He replayed the moment in his mind, the boy's tattered clothes. The steady look in his eyes, the way he seemed to know something no one else did. Driven by curiosity, and perhaps a sliver of guilt, he asked his assistant to investigate. She returned hours later, looking puzzled. "I couldn't find much," she admitted. "There's no record of him in the usual places, no shelters, no arrests, nothing." That only deepened the mystery. Meanwhile, the boy was back on the streets, navigating the world he'd known for years. It wasn't an easy life, but he had learned to survive. Every alley had its risks, every face its story. He knew how to move unnoticed, how to hear things he wasn't supposed to hear, and how to stay one step ahead of danger. It was in one of those alleys, weeks ago, that he had overheard a conversation. Two men, their voices low but urgent, were talking about the billionaire. At first, the boy hadn't paid much attention. Rich people were always the topic of whispers in the city, envy, rumors, scandals. But this was different. "They'll hit him where it hurts," one of the men had said. "Soon," the other replied. "He won't even see it coming." The boy hadn't understood all the details, but the tone was clear. Someone was planning something, and the billionaire was the target. He had no love for rich people. They ignored kids like him, pretended he didn't exist, but something about the conversation stuck with him. Maybe it was the way they talked. Cold and calculating, as if the billionaire's life was just a pawn in their game. Back at his office, the billionaire tried to push the encounter out of his mind. Meetings, phone calls, and deals demanded his attention. Yet, every so often, he'd catch himself glancing at his phone, wondering if there was more to the boy's warning. That evening, as he reviewed security footage from his estate, a habit he rarely indulged in, something caught his eye. In one clip, recorded late at night, there was movement near the gate. A shadow. It was brief and barely noticeable, but it was enough to make his pulse quicken. He called his head of security, who assured him it was likely a stray animal or a glitch in the system. But the billionaire wasn't convinced. The boy's words had planted a seed of doubt, and now it was growing, taking root in every unexplained noise, every unfamiliar face. The next time the billionaire's car approached that intersection, he instructed the driver to stop. He rolled down the window and scanned the street, hoping to see the boy again. But the curb was empty. Days turned into weeks. The billionaire couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He began noticing things he hadn't before: people lingering too long near his office, cars that seemed to follow him a little too closely. Then it happened. One night, as he returned home late, the lights in his house flickered. A moment later, the power went out entirely. His phone vibrated with an alert. The security system had been breached. Heart pounding, he called his head of security, who assured him that the backup generators would activate and the breach would be assessed. But in those dark moments, waiting in the silent house, the billionaire thought of the boy. When the power returned, the billionaire made a decision. He had to find the boy. He needed answers. It took weeks of searching, using every resource at his disposal, but finally, one of his investigators spotted the boy near an abandoned warehouse. The billionaire went himself, ignoring the warnings of his staff. When he approached, the boy didn't look surprised. "I told you someone was watching," the boy said calmly. The billionaire didn't respond right away. He stood there, looking at the boy, realizing that this child, someone society ignored, might be the only one who could help him uncover the truth. The billionaire stood there, towering over the boy who had seemingly predicted the strange occurrences in his life. Despite his power and wealth, he felt vulnerable for the first time in years. "Why did you warn me?" he asked finally, his voice edged with frustration. "What do you know?" The boy tilted his head, his gaze steady but unreadable. "I heard them talking," he said. "The people who are after you. They don't just want your money, they want to destroy you. And they know how to do it." The billionaire frowned, trying to piece the puzzle together. "Who are they? What do they want from me?" The boy sighed, shoving his hands into his pockets. "You don't get it, do you? They don't care about you as a person. To them, you're just a symbol, someone they can use to send a message. I don't know who they are, but they're watching you. And they're waiting for the right moment to strike." The billionaire wasn't sure if he believed the boy, but something about his calm certainty made it impossible to walk away. "Come with me," he said. "I can protect you. And you can tell me everything you know." The boy hesitated. "You think you're safe because you have money and guards. You're not. But I'll come with you, on one condition." "What's that?" "You listen to me. All of it. Even the parts you don't want to hear." The billionaire nodded, though he wasn't sure what he was agreeing to. As they rode back to the billionaire's mansion, the boy started to open up. He described how he had been living on the streets, scavenging for food and avoiding trouble, when he overheard the conversation in an alley. Two men, their voices low and urgent, were discussing a plan that revolved around the billionaire. "They said you've made enemies," the boy explained. "Big ones. People you don't even know about. And they're planning to take you down in a way that everyone will notice." The billionaire listened, his jaw tightening. He thought of the business deals that had gone sour. The lawsuits, the rivals he had crushed to stay on top. He had always known his success came at a cost, but he had never imagined it would put him in real danger. "What else did they say?" he asked. The boy hesitated, glancing out the window. "They mentioned a date. Something's going to happen soon." When they arrived at the billionaire's mansion, the boy's eyes widened at the sheer size and luxury of the place. But he didn't say a word. Instead, he scanned the property with the wary look of someone who had spent his life watching for threats. "You're right about one thing," the boy said as they entered the house. "This place feels safe. But it's not." The billionaire frowned. "What do you mean?" "Big houses have big blind spots. Security systems can fail. And the people you trust the most are usually the ones who'll betray you." The billionaire thought of his staff, his driver, his assistants, his security team. He had always prided himself on surrounding himself with the best, but now he found himself questioning everything. That night, the billionaire received an anonymous message. It was a single line of text: "You've been warned." He showed it to the boy, who nodded grimly. "They're getting closer," the boy said. "And they want you scared." The billionaire's frustration boiled over. "Why me? What did I do to deserve this?" The boy didn't answer right away. "Sometimes it's not about what you did," he said quietly. "Sometimes it's about what you represent." The next day, the billionaire's security team found evidence that someone had been on the property, footprints near the perimeter, a small camera hidden in a tree. The billionaire's sense of control was slipping, and the boy's warning seemed more real than ever. Desperate for answers, the billionaire pressed the boy for more information. "You said they're planning something. What is it?" When is it going to happen? The boy hesitated, his expression troubled. I don't know everything, he admitted. But I know this, they want to make an example out of you. And they'll stop at nothing to do it. The billionaire, now visibly shaken, called an emergency meeting with his security team. The room was filled with highly trained professionals, men and women who had handled threats before. But as the billionaire outlined what he had learned, from the cryptic warning of a homeless boy to the suspicious signs around his estate, his team exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, the head of security, spoke up. Sir, we can increase surveillance, monitor communications, and add more guards. But this sounds unconventional. Are you sure this isn't just paranoia? The billionaire shot him a sharp look. I'm not paying you to doubt me. I'm paying you to keep me alive. Someone is planning something. And I won't sit around waiting for it to happen. Reluctantly, the team began implementing additional precautions. Cameras were installed in every blind spot, the staff was vetted again, and guards were placed on high alert. But even with the added measures, the billionaire couldn't shake the feeling that the danger was already inside the gates. Meanwhile, the boy roamed the mansion, observing everything with an intensity that made the staff uneasy. He asked questions about the security protocols, pointing out vulnerabilities no one had noticed before. You think cameras are enough? He said to the billionaire one evening. They're not. People who plan something like this, they're smart. They'll find a way around your defenses. They'll use someone you trust. The billionaire frowned, his mind racing. He had spent his life trusting no one, relying only on contracts and power to protect himself. Yet, the boy's words planted seeds of doubt. What do you mean, someone I trust? The boy shrugged. A guard. An assistant. Someone who knows your routines, your weaknesses. They won't come at you head-on. They'll make it look like you're the one who slipped up. The boy's warning about a specific date loomed larger with each passing day. The billionaire's paranoia grew, and so did his dependence on the boy. The homeless child, once invisible to society, now held a unique power over one of the most influential men in the city. But as the date approached, the billionaire began to notice changes around him. His closest staff members seemed nervous. His assistant avoided eye contact. The head of security was strangely vague about updates, and then came the breaking point. The night before the supposed date, the billionaire received another anonymous message. Tomorrow, it ends. He called the boy into his study. The room was dimly lit, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. This is it, the billionaire said, showing the message to the boy. What do I do? The boy studied the message, his expression unreadable. You don't wait for them to come to you. You make the first move. The billionaire's brow furrowed. What does that mean? It means we set a trap, the boy said simply. Under the boy's guidance, the billionaire orchestrated a plan to uncover the traitors in his midst. They deliberately left a gap in the security system, an opportunity that would tempt whoever was behind the plot. The boy suggested that the billionaire stay in his private office, where they could monitor everything from a hidden control room. The billionaire was reluctant to put his life in the hands of a homeless teenager, but at this point, he had no better options. As midnight approached, the tension in the control room was unbearable. The boy and the billionaire watched the security feeds, waiting for something, anything, to happen. And then, it did. On one of the screens, a shadowy figure moved toward the mansion's back entrance, bypassing the security sensors with practiced ease. A second figure followed, carrying equipment that suggested they were there to disable more of the system. The billionaire's jaw tightened. Who are they? The boy didn't answer. He was focused on the screen, his eyes narrowing as the figures approached the house, and then, the shock came. One of the figures stepped into the light, revealing their face. It was the billionaire's head of security. The billionaire froze, disbelief washing over him. No. It can't be. The boy's voice was steady. I told you. It's always someone you trust. The billionaire, fueled by anger and betrayal, grabbed the intercom and ordered the guards to intercept the intruders. But when he looked at the live feeds, he saw something that chilled him to the bone. The guards weren't moving. Some were gone entirely, their posts abandoned. They've got people on the inside, the boy said grimly. Realizing the danger, the billionaire turned to the boy. What do we do now? The boy didn't hesitate. We don't wait for them to find us. We go to them. With the boy leading the way, the billionaire moved through hidden passages in his mansion, avoiding detection. The two of them reached a secure room where the billionaire kept emergency weapons, a precaution he had never thought he'd need to use. As the intruders made their way deeper into the house, the billionaire and the boy prepared for a confrontation that would decide everything. The boy paced the secure room, his mind racing. They think they have all the control, he said, glancing at the billionaire. But they don't know we're 2 steps ahead. You've lived your whole life in a world of strategy and power plays. Use it now. The billionaire, shaken but determined, took a deep breath. What's the plan? The boy smirked faintly. We don't fight them head-on. We make them question each other. The boy revealed his idea. Using the mansion's hidden intercom system, they could project false conversations into key areas, sowing distrust among the intruders. Meanwhile, the boy would use his street-honed skills to set up distractions and lead them into traps within the house. You just need to stay calm, the boy said. You're not their target. Your mind is. As the intruders moved through the mansion, voices echoed through the halls. I thought you said this would be easy, a calm, disembodied voice said, piped through the speakers. Shut up, snapped another, real and present, one of the intruders. The head of security paused, frowning. Who's talking? The billionaire, hidden in the control room, watched the live feeds. The boy had timed the audio perfectly, making the intruders look at one another suspiciously. This is a trap, the projected voice continued, now layered with faint static. They know we're here. The billionaire saw the hesitation spread through the group. They weren't just intruders, they were mercenaries, each with their own agendas. And now, their confidence was cracking. While the audio disrupted their unity, the boy unleashed the next phase of his plan. He had reprogrammed the mansion's automated systems to create chaos. Lights flickered, doors locked and unlocked at random, and alarms sounded from different wings of the house. The billionaire marveled at the boy's ingenuity. How did you know how to do all this? The boy smirked. The streets teach you how to think fast. And I've spent enough nights sneaking into places I wasn't supposed to be. The intruders, now fragmented and unnerved, began to argue. One of them accused another of being a double agent. The head of security tried to regain control, but the seeds of distrust had already taken root. The boy whispered to the billionaire, now's your chance. Call in the real guards, quietly. Let them pick off the intruders one by one while they're distracted. The billionaire nodded, finally feeling a sliver of control return. He used a separate, untraceable line to summon his emergency response team, highly trained operatives who had been on standby for moments like this. As the emergency team moved in, the boy orchestrated a final play. Using his knowledge of the mansion's layout, he led the billionaire through hidden tunnels to confront the head of security directly. When they emerged, the boy stepped forward, his voice steady. You thought no one would see you for what you are. But someone always does. The head of security froze, his weapon aimed at the billionaire but his resolve shaken. You don't understand, this isn't personal. It's survival. The billionaire, for the first time, stood his ground. You betrayed me. And you underestimated me. That was your mistake. The boy pressed a hidden button on the wall, activating a trapdoor beneath the head of security. The man fell, his weapon clattering to the floor, as the billionaire's emergency team swept in to neutralize the remaining intruders. As dawn broke, the mansion was quiet again. The billionaire stood on the balcony, looking out over his sprawling estate. The boy joined him, his small frame dwarfed by the vastness of the view. You saved my life, the billionaire said finally. The boy shrugged. You needed saving. The billionaire glanced down at him. What about you? What do you need? The boy hesitated, then said quietly, a chance. Just a chance to be seen. The billionaire nodded, understanding the weight of those words. You'll have it. And I'll make sure of it. Would you like to expand on the billionaire's redemption arc or explore the boy's journey further? After this moment, the billionaire's near-death experience shook him to his core. For years, he had measured his success in terms of profits, influence, and status. But as he looked at the boy, who had risked everything for a man society would have ignored, he realized that wealth alone wasn't enough. "You've given me a second chance," the billionaire said to the boy the next morning. "I can't change my past, but I can decide what to do with my future." The boy's expression remained guarded. "People like you don't just change overnight." The billionaire nodded. "You're right. But maybe you can help me see what I've been blind to." For the boy, the days following the incident were surreal. For the first time in years, he slept in a real bed, ate warm meals, and didn't have to worry about where he'd find shelter. But the mansion felt like a gilded cage, safe, but not his world. "You don't owe me anything," the boy said one evening as they sat in the study. "I didn't help you for a reward." The billionaire shook his head. "This isn't about owing. It's about fixing what's broken. And it starts with me." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder. "I've already begun funding initiatives for homeless youth. Housing, education, job programs. But I need someone who understands what it's like to be out there. Someone who can tell me what really works." The boy looked skeptical. "You're asking me to be your charity case?" "No," the billionaire said firmly. "I'm asking you to be my partner." Over time, the boy began to trust the billionaire, though the road wasn't easy. He taught the billionaire about life on the streets, the struggles, the dangers, the resilience it took to survive. In turn, the billionaire introduced the boy to a world of resources and opportunities he had never imagined. The two of them worked together to develop programs that made a tangible impact. They transformed abandoned properties into shelters, created scholarships for underprivileged youth, and even launched an outreach team to connect with kids still living on the streets. But the most significant transformation wasn't in the programs they built, it was in the billionaire himself. The billionaire began to confront his past decisions, the deals that had displaced communities, the policies that had favored profits over people. He sought out those he had wronged, offering apologies and tangible reparations. One day, as they visited a newly opened youth center, the billionaire turned to the boy. "You were right. People like me don't change overnight. But you showed me that it's possible." The boy smiled faintly. "Maybe people like me needed to see that, too." Months later, during a public event for the launch of their largest project yet, a nationwide initiative to end youth homelessness, the billionaire took the stage. Standing beside him was the boy, now dressed in a sharp suit but still carrying the quiet strength that had saved them both. The billionaire addressed the crowd. "This is the story of how one moment, one act of compassion, can change everything. I thought I was saving him, but the truth is, he saved me. He reminded me of what really matters." The boy stepped up to the microphone. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled slightly. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just someone who wanted to be seen. And now, I want to make sure no one else has to feel invisible." The audience erupted into applause, but the boy's eyes were on the billionaire. They had both been transformed by that single moment, a warning on a rainy night that had led to something neither of them could have imagined. As they left the stage, the billionaire put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "What's next?" The boy grinned. "I've got a few ideas. But it starts with listening." And so, the billionaire and the boy began the next chapter of their journey, not as savior and saved, but as equals, united by a shared mission to change the world, one life at a time. Years passed, and the unlikely partnership between the billionaire and the boy became a beacon of hope. Their programs transformed countless lives, not just by providing resources but by fostering a sense of dignity and belonging for those who had been forgotten. The boy, now a young man, had grown into a leader in his own right. He spoke at global summits, lobbied for systemic change, and never forgot the streets that had shaped him. The billionaire, once a symbol of corporate greed, became a vocal advocate for social equity, using his wealth and influence to challenge the very systems he had once benefited from. One evening, as they sat in the office of their foundation, the billionaire looked at the young man. "You've come a long way," he said with a smile, The young man shrugged, though his eyes were warm. So have you. They both laughed, the weight of their shared journey settling comfortably between them. The narrator's voice closes the story with a powerful message. This isn't just a story about a billionaire and a homeless boy. It's a story about us, about how we see one another and what we choose to do with our moments of compassion. What if we didn't wait for a crisis to act? What if we chose to see the invisible, to listen to the unheard, to lift someone when they've fallen? The power to change lives isn't just for billionaires. It's in all of us. One moment of kindness, one act of empathy, it could change the world. So, what will you do with your moment? Share your thoughts, your stories, or your actions in the comments below. Together, let's create a ripple effect of change. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Your support helps us bring more amazing content your way.